Robert Lovett is an internationally recognized Australian artist, and we're very fortunate to have him with us today. He has agreed to share some of his life experiences. Robert, tell us about some of your earliest memories.
I have vivid memories of back as far as year 1933, 34, living in a bark hut on the banks of the Barrington River. That was during the Great Depression, and my father became unemployed and he went bush. Built this hut out of bush poles and stringy bark, earth floor, and we lived there for a year or two. He caught rabbits for a living. My mother, who was a dressmaker, she did sewing for the local people, and we weathered out the bad times in that way. Finally, the Depression ended and or subsided at least, and we went back to the city, back to Parramatta, where my father took a job with the Shell Oil Company and I began school. During all of my school years, I was drawing and very keen on art and painting, and the teachers recognised my talent and encouraged it. I used to draw a lot. I used to go to any exhibition that was on. I'd go by myself. My family hadn't encouraged the interest. I don't know where it came from, but I used to go to every art exhibition that was on, and it seemed inevitable that I'd finish up in some form of art. That's how I went through my school days. I remember the year I left school, 1945. The six of us, my mates and I, took a canoe trip down the Shoalhaven River for 80 miles from near Goulburn down to Nowra. It took 10 days, and that was an inspiration for me. It was wonderful being in such remote and wild country. I didn't take a sketchbook because everything we had got wet, but it was a wonderful experience. Well, then I went off to art school and started to learn commercial art, but I found that I couldn't live. I had to make an income, so I took a job with the Main Roads Department. They promptly transferred me to Bega country office, and I continued my studies by correspondence while at Bega. Main Roads was good for me. I learned not only road design but surveying. I used to go out with the surveyors. I was given a camera and a darkroom. I learned about photography, but most important of all, I met other artists, an artist called Jack Kirkland, who introduced me to watercolours, and an artist called Leonard Long, who introduced me to oil paints. I was 17 at the time, and I began painting, and I've been painting ever since. I still have a painting, one of my very earliest paintings done in that Bega era. I think the painting was dated in 1948, and it somehow survived all this time. And looking back, I'm quite surprised it doesn't look too bad. About this time, the Snowy Mountains scheme was just beginning, and I decided that to be a little adventurous, I took a job with the Snowy Mountains Authority.
Tell us about your work on the Snowy Mountains scheme.
My 17 years on the Snowy was one of the greatest experiences of my life, and it's only in retrospect that I can really appreciate the wonderful time that it was. I joined the Snowy in 1950. I was immediately attached to the survey department. They, because of my artistic ability, sent me off on a trip to sketch and explore the whole area, which hadn't been mapped at that time. So I went in a four-wheel drive, some places on horseback, into remote camps and mountainous areas, sketching all the time, and eventually from this built up the diagrammatic illustrations that were used for many years in the publicity of the scheme. As a result of that, I was transferred into the Public Relations Department, given the title of official artist, and I used to do all the exhibitions. We had exhibits in Sydney Royal Easter Show, Melbourne, Adelaide, Brisbane, country towns, especially down the Murray Valley. I did artist impressions of projects, produced books, brochures. The work was just so interesting. I worked with the photographers, the cinema photographers, and really had an insight into the whole scheme. I visited every project that was under construction and really saw the whole thing grow from the beginning. During the time that I worked on the Snowy, I was painting the landscape, painting the mountains, and really grew to love the area. So much so that I bought a cattle property, 800 hectares in the mountains, beautiful country, 2 miles of trout river flowing through it. It was a weekend retreat. My wife and 3 boys, who were all born in Cooma, we used to spend weekends there. I would paint, we'd work the cattle, we had horses, and it was just such a beautiful time of my life. But eventually it had to come to an end. My work finished there in 1968, and I decided to move on.
You're well known for your Australian paintings, particularly horses, Robert. How did you learn how to paint them?
As a result of having the cattle property and my association with horses and cattle in the bush, I just naturally developed an interest and started painting horses and cattle. And then I developed it further. I studied anatomy. I went over to America. I studied horse anatomy with a very famous anatomist called John Zahurek. And we actually built a horse from the skeleton up, every muscle built in clay, noting every connection, every bone, and every movement resulting from the contraction of that muscle. It was really a revelation to me. And from that experience, I got into sculpture and learned to do bronze sculpture. I did my first piece called The Man from Snowy River soon after that, and it was a fascination. I very soon developed a reputation for my paintings and sculpture of horses.
You're very famous for your Australiana paintings. What other countries do you like to paint in?
I love travelling, and I've painted a lot in Europe, particularly England and Italy. In America, I've been there many times. I've exhibited in Arizona and Beverly Hills. I've painted a lot in the Pacific Islands and Asia. I've only just come back from a few weeks painting in Bali.
We see a lot of your oil paintings, Robert. I understand you paint in watercolours as well. Is that right?
Watercolour is my favourite medium, in fact. I love the spontaneity of watercolour and the freshness of it. I spend a lot of time with oils because of the demand, but just recently I've had a major watercolour exhibition at the Robert Lovett Art Gallery at Marina Mirage. It was entirely watercolours, first time in my life that I've had an exhibition like that, and it was an outstanding success. We had a wonderful opening night. We had people playing the harp, and the champagne flowed. We had the red carpet and lots of sales. Everybody had a great time and enjoyed themselves. It was a real party atmosphere.
What is the most exciting exhibition opening night that you have ever had?
Oh, without a doubt, the Man from Snowy River exhibition in Sydney Opera House. That was in 1982. I was fortunate to be able to paint on location with the producers of the Man from Snowy River movie, and that culminated in an exhibition in the Opera House coinciding with the launching of the movie. It was very exciting. All the producers and actors were there. Jack Thompson read the poem, and the exhibition sold out immediately, and it was a memorable night. In fact, it was probably one of the highlights of my entire career.
If you had another shot at life, would you still be an artist?
Yes, I'd do it all again. It's given me great freedom, great lifestyle. I've enjoyed every minute of it, and satisfaction in producing something tangible and something worthwhile.